Hello guys, Dan here. Welcome back to the channel. In today's little longer video than usual, I will show you how to paint Padre Inquisitor Mendoza. It is very interesting model and there is a lot of techniques that I will show you how to paint on him. Like his molten flame sword. I will show you how to paint this non-metallic metal on his blue armor, and as well how to paint his green cape. So grab yourself a drink, relax, and enjoy the rest of the video. I started with painting the model black with the 3 very thin coats, and I just did the zenithal highlight with the white spray. I just spray it from like 45-degree angle from the top, just a little, so that I can easily see the details on the model while I'm painting it. Because when you do the zenithal, it is much easier to see the difference between the details, because these models are like super detailed. Then I'm going to start blocking colors on his blue armor first. For this I'm going to use dark Prussian blue, and I'm going to paint all the armor panels that I want them to be blue with the 2 very thin coats of this paint. So this is going to be our base paint for all the future layers of the blue that we're going to paint over it. So when you are doing this, focus it to have a good coverage so you don't see any black under it, because it will help a lot with the next layer of paint. For the next step, I'm going to mix blue-green inside the dark Prussian blue. This is going to be a 50-50 mix. And now I'm going to paint these armor panels, and this is going to be their final color. So when you're painting these armor panels, you're going to have to paint them in 2 very thin coats to have satisfying coverage. And I want you to focus when you're painting this not to paint inside the recesses. I want you just to avoid all the recesses and paint only the raised areas, because it will help us a lot in the next step when we are going to do the shadows. Now I'm going to add a little of the white color in the mix, and this will be for my first highlight stage. Here I'm going to sketch my highlights with this color, so I will just paint the areas that are most raised and mostly exposed to the light that's coming up from above. So I will focus like on doing the edge highlight, but I will do the edge highlight with little thicker lines than usual. I will mostly focus my painting on the raised areas. Like if you see a flat panel that is raised to the top, you will mostly paint like the raised area, while everything that is under or in the shadows, you will leave it in the previous paint. And also be careful here not to go inside the recesses, so just focus on the flat panels. Now we need to create some contrast between the panels, so I'm going to mix 50-50% with the dark Prussian blue and the black, and add a little water to it, so I will create like a kind of wash. And then I'm going very carefully to fill out all the recesses and all the areas between armor panels with this mix. This will help us create shadows, and it will actually help us create a contrast in preparation for the next step of the highlight. As you can see here on the knee pad, I'm glazing a little of this mix just to create a little darker shadows on it. And for our final highlight, I'm going to use a pure white. So with this, I'm going to trace all the edges and do the edge highlight, drawing very thin lines. And on the top of the flat areas, on the surfaces that the light is hitting it straight from above, I'm going to draw like a little lines just to create little highlights. So just go slowly around the model and highlight every sharp edge that these armor panels have. This will really make these armors complete, and it will unify all the highlights and the shadows that we did so far on the model. Here you can see how everything looks completed. I will hold this shot a little longer, so if you are copying my style, you can pause here and copy the light placements same as I did. Now we can move on to his green cape. I will use a Russian uniform green from the Vallejo for this, because on the official artwork I didn't like that his uniform was like too dark, so I just use a little lighter green. With this paint you're going to paint his cloak with the two very thin coats, so you want to achieve even coverage all around so that you cannot see any black under it, so you should look something like this. Then I'm going to mix a basic skin tone and the Goblin green. This will be a 50-50 mix, and this will be my first highlight. With this I'm going to get focused on like raised areas of the folds, but you can go a little deeper inside the recesses, but don't go all the way. So you can go maybe like a halfway towards the recesses, but mostly get focused on the raised areas. And you will have to do this in 2 or 3 very thin coats, so that you start really seeing that highlight looking really brighter towards the first layer of the paint that we applied. Now I'm going to mix a little of the ivory, like maybe 30%, in the mix that I made for the previous layer, and this will be my highlight for the folds. This time I'm going to highlight only the most raised areas of the folds, so comparing to the last step when you are going a little deeper inside the shades and covering most of the folds, this time you're going to focus only on the most raised areas, so this will be a very little highlight, and you won't go too deep with it. Now you're going to create a glaze from the Goblin green. You can see the consistency on my nail. And with this glaze, you are going to start slowly unifying all the layers of the green on this model. So you're just going to glaze the whole surface, wait for it to completely dry, then apply another layer of the glaze, then wait for it to completely dry, and repeat this step as much time as you want, because every time you're going to apply it, it will unify and make your transitions much better. So the more of these layers you do, your transitions on the cape will look more natural and much better. With the cape completed, we can move on to finish off his armor. I'm going to paint now the white armor panels. This time I will start with the pale blue, and I want you here to be focused on painting just the armor panels, but paint like 99% of the armor panels, only leaving the areas like the recesses or the place when two armor panels touch each other. You want to leave them in black, because we are not going to wash this actually, because they are mostly flat armor panels and there is no point in wash. In any case, if you make any mistakes, just pick up that mix of dark Prussian blue and the black and draw those shadows again. Now I'm going to add white, like 50% to the mix of the pale blue, and this time I'm going to paint like 80 to 90% of the areas of these armor panels, and this is going to be the final color, and this will be actually highlighted after it. So focus on the flat surfaces and don't go inside the recesses, and now you can go even less to the areas that are like under, or areas that are two armor panels are touching but one is under each other, so you can stop there. And for the final highlight, I'm going to use pure white. In this case, this is going to be done as an edge highlight, or just trace all the edges and all the lines between the armor panels. They don't need to be very thin lines, but it will look better if they are thin. He also have these two orange armor panels on top of his shoulders. So first that I'm going to do is just to paint them with the orange brown, and I will do this with 2 or 3 very thin layers. Because we have black under it, it will be troublesome to go straight to the orange, so we need to layer a first color under it so that the next paint will look much more better and much more warmer. For the second paint, I'm going to use a Scrofulous brown, and I'm going to paint it in 2 very thin coats. So I'm painting the whole surface, just focused of not messing the work I already did around. So just paint it to be unified so that you cannot see any other layers of the paint that are under it, so you want just the pure orange look. And for the highlight, I'm going to use a flat yellow, and this is actually only going to be an edge highlight on these panels, and this will conclude the work on his armor for now. Let's move on now to do the leather parts, like the scabbard for the sword and all the leather belts that he have. This is going to be a little simpler step. I'm going to paint like a damaged leather. So first thing that I need to do is to base paint all the leather parts with the Rhinox Hide. This paint actually have a really good coverage, so only one layer will be enough to cover all the black. And now I'm going to pick up orange brown, and I'm going to use a stippling technique on the edge of the sword to draw a little scratches, and also you can draw a little longer lines to make a little bigger scratches on the leather. So you're going to do this all around on the belt as well, on his holster for the gun. So just focused on the edges. Then I'm going to add a little of the dark sand to the same mix, and I'm going to repeat this, but this time my focus will be a little less areas and a little less dots and lines than before. And also you can use this to highlight any of the scratches that you made before, that you want them to be actually a little brighter. Now I'm going to pick a paint called Smoke. This paint is really thick, so I created the wash by adding 2 or 3 drops of water to it, and I'm just going to wash and cover the whole area of the letters that we painted so far, and that will be it. It will unify all the colors and the scratches, and everything look great after this. I'm going now to start painting his face. I'm going to use a Cork brown. This color is little transparent, so this will have to be applied in 2 or 3 very thin coats. Just wait for the paint to be completely dry before applying the next coat, and that will help you actually in achieving an even coverage all around, so you don't want to see any black under this paint. Then I'm going to use a black red, and I'm going to create a wash out of it. So I'm going to add like 3 drops of water to this color, and I'm going to wash the whole face. Just don't allow paint to pool too much, and let it completely dry before you start going to the next step. And now I'm going to mix Cork Brown with the Sunny Skin Tone 50-50, and I'm going to start highlighting the face. This time I will focus on all the raised areas on the face. I will just leave the shadows like around the eyes, around the nose and the lips intact. And my final highlight will be done with the basic skin tone, and this is going to be a very little highlight. So you're going to highlight only tip of the nose, tip of the cheek, on very small spots. The thing that you need to pay attention is actually that this color looks a lot brighter when you apply it than after it is dry. To paint the eyes, you're going to paint the eye sockets white and then take some dark wash like a noon oil or a dark tone and fill it up. And then after it's dry, just take the black, one of your smallest brushes, and just paint two little black dots to make the pupils. Now it's time to finish off with the black armor panels and the weapon. I'm going to pick up a black paint, and I'm going now to repaint all the parts of the model that previously I made some mistakes, that I touched the parts that are supposed to be black with some other colors. So just going to repaint those, and on the parts that are still left with the zenithal highlight, some of them I will leave intact, some of them I will repaint it black. Depends on your feeling how you want your lights and the highlights to come in the next step. So how we are going to approach to do the highlights? First I'm going to add very little white to the black, so I'm going to create a dark gray color. And then I'm going to sketch my highlights. So actually I'm going to do the edge highlighting on the black armor panels, but this time this is going to be a really rough sketches, really thick lines. So I'm just going to mark approximately where I want my shadows to be and where I want my highlights to come next. For the next part, I'm going to add a little more white to my mix, and this time I'm going to use the same highlight as I did in previous step, but this time I'm going to cover much less areas than before. And when I'm doing the edge highlight, I'm going to draw and to pull much thinner lines than I did in the previous step. For the final highlight, I'm going to use the pure white. Since this is going to be our final highlight, these lines have to be the smallest and the thinnest lines that are we going to make, and we are going to make these lights on every sharp edge. So just go around the model and trace every single black edge that you have with these lines. Try to focus on using the side of your brush wherever that's possible. Whenever it's not, just use the tip of your brush and draw these highlights. This is actually the most important highlight, and this will unify the whole model and it will make everything look great. For this barrel of the gun, I always want them to look different, so I wanted it to have like a bluish non-metallic metal note. So I just make one wash with the Periscopes, and after it got dried I just applied the highlight with the white over it, same as before, and that effect created a non-metallic metal look on the barrel. One of the few details that's left to be done is this dead Sazvashti trooper on his base. So first I'm going to take a basic skin tone and I'm just going to paint the braids for this alien that I'm going later to paint them red. So if I paint it red over the black, it won't look that rich in color, it will look really desaturated. So that's why I based it with a basic skin tone. For the head, because it look like a skull, I will just use Bonewhite and just cover it in two very thin layers, but I try to achieve that I have like an even coverage over the black base there. For that armor that he's standing on, I'll just apply one thick wash with the smoke, because my plan is here as all of my Panashani army is actually on the snow bases, so he will stand on a snow base and this thing will be mostly covered with the snow. Now we'll go back to the head. I will use the Scarlet blood and I will just repaint these braids that he's actually holding the head. So one very thin layer will do the job perfectly, because we are painting now over the very bright color, very close to white, so one layer will have enough coverage. Then for the rest of the head, I'll just pick up a skeleton horde. It's a contrast paint and I'm just going to wash the whole head with this paint. And after the wash is dry, for the braids you can just pick up orange fire or any bright orange that you have and just do the little stippling on the top areas, just to create a very little highlight there, so there is not actually that much work to be done. Now it's time to paint his Molten Blade and create like a molten steel effect. To achieve that, first I'm going to paint the sword with the Ivory, because I want all my colors that I'm going to apply next to look very bright. So I did this like in two very thin coats. And now I will take a deep yellow, or if you don't have this, any like a rich yellow color will do the job, and paint the whole sword with this. So I have to paint it in two very thin coats. Since I'm painting over Ivory, it looked really rich and really saturated, so I was happy with that look. Now I took orange fire and I started stippling it on the cutting edges on the sword, on the both sides. So you can start doing this and you can start pulling the paint from the middle of the cutting edge towards the edge itself. So just go around on the both sides and just stipple it. It can totally be uneven, it doesn't need to be even, because the more uneven it is, the better effect it will be. Now I will pick up a Scarlet blood, which is like a very rich red color, and now I'm going to stipple it around the cutting edge, but this time much less than I did before, because you want actually to see a little orange and little yellow through it. And for the last step, I'm going to pick up a black, and I'm just going to pick up some areas and paint it like with little stippling dots, just to create the effect that the metal is already cooled down on those parts, like from hitting the enemies or hitting some like hard armor. So you're just going around on a few places, and mostly like on the tip of the sword, you're going to paint it a little black. Now in the middle of the sword he have engraved this Flamma Veritas, which I think it means like a true flame or something like that. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pick up a Scarlet blood, and I'm just going very lightly with tip of my brush, just to try to highlight it. So you need to be really precise here and only use a very light brush strokes on the tip of the brush, because you don't want to go actually inside and mess up the yellow that is under it. And then I will pick up black and do the totally same, just to create the effect that those letters have been already cooling down and they are not in a molten lava state anymore. There is a few details left to be done. So first we need to pick up all the LEDs on this model. This is very simple step. I will just use a Scarlet blood and I'm just going to fill up these sockets that he have already on his armor. So just be really careful here not to mess up any previous work that we already done. So pick up one of your smallest brushes and just slowly fill it up. And the last thing that we have to do is to draw these little crosses on his shoulders. I did this with Ivory, and I practiced this on the piece of paper like 5-6 times before I start painting it on the model. It's quite easy cross to do, so it's just simple cross with two little like reversed points of the arrow on each side. So just pick up one of your smallest brushes and just draw these details, and that will be it, guys. This model is done. I'm going to transfer him to the base that I based on all my Panasciani army. If you're interested how I did it, there will be a link included in the comment section down below. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it lasted too long, but there were so many good techniques that I wanted to show you on this model. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content for me. And if you have comments and suggestions what should I paint next from the military orders, please let me know in the section down below and I will try to do my best. This will be all for now, guys. Stay safe, take care, and see you soon. Bye bye.